Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to be talking about modal auxiliary verbs. I just really want to urge you to go to the document that I shared with you earlier, the Google Doc, about modal auxiliary verbs. Maybe have them open in another tab for if you need to access them, or maybe even print them out so that you can follow along with me. A lot of what I'm going to share with you today is repeated in the Edpuzzle video exercise quiz that you took the other day. So let's just get started. Modal auxiliary verbs are also called modal verbs or just modals for short. I just love the word modal because it rhymes with yodel. Let's read, okay? Modal auxiliary verbs help to enhance or to give more depth to the main verb of a sentence. Now, we're going to be working with 10 modal verbs. Some teachers only talk about 6. My grouping, I use a grouping of 10. All of the modal verbs that we're going to be working with are crock-pot verbs, except for one, that's werden. That one is not a crock-pot verb, it's a pot verb. Pot verbs, you might remember, are verbs that are irregular in the do and the as the s form. Their irregularities are, in this particular verb, schlafen, the umlaut that gets put over the A in schläfst and schläft. We remember all of the regular forms of the verb go in the pot, and the irregular forms are outside of the pot. So schlafen is a pot verb, and one of the modal auxiliary verbs that we're learning, werden, is also a pot verb. I'm just going to draw a little line around there so that we can see that. Get a little visual on that. So remember, the irregular forms of the verbs are outside the pot. The regular forms are inside the pot. So the verb werden is the one pot verb. All of the other ones are crock pot verbs. This verb werden, which means will, it also means to become. But as a modal, it means will. And yep, so this is the only pot verb. Everyone else is a crock pot verb. Notice how the E changes to an I and the D disappears. This one doesn't end in a T. It's got a lot of irregularity, so you're going to have to just memorize that. The other 9 verbs are something called crock-pot verbs. They're going to be irregular in the ich, du, and as the s forms. The regular forms are going to stay inside the crock pot. The irregular forms are outside. This particular verb, können, the O umlaut changes to an A. With all 9 of these crock-pot verbs, the ich form and the as the s form are exactly the same. There are no exceptions. Ich kann, kann. Also with all 9 of these crock-pot verbs, the only difference between the ich and the er form and the du form is the du form has an st. So for all 9 of these crock-pot verbs, if you remember what it means, and if you remember what the ich form is, then you've got the verb set. You've got it memorized. You see, if you know that können means can, and if you know that the ich form is kann, then you know that the er form is kann, because these are going to be the same, and that the du form is going to be kann with an st. The remaining 3 forms, the plural forms, they're all regular. Können, könnt, können. Let's go back and take a look at our 10 modal auxiliary verbs. And again, you can follow along on your paper if you need to. You can write on there, write notes on there if you need to. So we have dürfen, means to be allowed to or may. Ich darf, du darfst, er darf. Wir dürfen, ihr dürft, sie dürfen. Können means can. Mögen means to like or to like to. Müssen means must or to have to. Sollen is should. Wollen is to want or to want to. Würden is would. Möchten is would like. And könnten is could. We did already mention werden, which means will. And as I said, these verbs help to enhance other verbs. So, for example, I could buy a gift. Or maybe you want to say, I will buy my mom a gift. Or would you go to Walmart for me, please? Which, by the way, I went to Walmart today. Craziness. Or maybe, do you want to go to Walmart? Or do you have to go to Walmart? Must you go to Walmart? You use these verbs in conjunction with another verb. All right, so now that we know what the verbs mean, and now that we know that they are all irregular and we know how to conjugate them, let's talk about how to use them. I'd like to also just take this time to share with you that I did create a Quizlet for you, so you can go on to Quizlet and study the conjugations of these verbs. Let's read along. So, how do you use modal auxiliary verbs? Modal auxiliary verbs are frequently, but not always, used in conjunction with another verb. When used with another verb, the modal gets conjugated, and the second verb gets placed at the end of the sentence unconjugated. Remember, when a verb is unconjugated, it's called an infinitive. So in a sentence that has a modal auxiliary verb, the modal gets conjugated and goes in the regular verb place, and the other verb goes way at the end of the sentence unconjugated, meaning it's going to end in an en. Let's take a look at these sample sentences. These sample sentences on the left have no modal in them. I'm going to zoom in a little bit with my ghetto cam. And the sentences on the right, they have the modal verb that's been placed in them. So let's take a look on the left, on the top. Der Krampus stiehlt mein Geschenk. The Krampus is stealing my gift. The one on the right, der Krampus will mein Geschenk stehlen. The Krampus wants to steal my present. Notice how in this sentence, the will is over here. That's the modal. It's conjugated. It looks like will, but it's not, right? It's a false friend. The other verb goes at the end of the sentence unconjugated. See that stiehlt? It became unconjugated and was thrown to the end of the sentence. Now watch out with the verb will. It comes from wollen. Wollen means to want. We look at this word will and it looks like English will. Oh gosh, but that's not what it means. Werden, a form of werden, means will, not will. Let's look at our next example. Ich schreibe ein Buch. I'm writing a book. Let's inject the verb können into that and make it I can write a book. Ich kann ein Buch schreiben. Now notice, with this sentence, they injected the modal, and the other verb, schreiben, was unconjugated and thrown to the end. Let's look at that again. The schreiben was unconjugated and thrown to the end of the sentence, and in its place, we put in the modal auxiliary verb. Even when this top sentence right here, right? We took this verb, stiehlt, we unconjugated it and threw it to the end of the sentence. And in its place, we put the conjugated form of wollen. Let's go to the third sentence. Der Weihnachtsmann trinkt Milch. That changes to der Weihnachtsmann mag Milch trinken. Again, this verb, trinkt, was thrown to the end of the sentence unconjugated, and in its place, the conjugated form of the modal auxiliary verb. You're frequently going to see a lot of words, well, sometimes just one, maybe two. Up here also, two words that come between your modal and the main verb at the end of the sentence. Let's go to the next one. Du hängst die Landkarte. You're hanging the map. You should hang the map is du sollst die Landkarte hängen. Again, we're taking this verb, hängst, unconjugating it and throwing it to the end of the sentence. And in its place, we're putting the conjugated form of the verb. This next example is a question. Gehen Sie nach Hause? Are you going home? Now, this is a question, we know, because not only is there a question mark at the end of it, but also the subject and the verb have been inverted. That's called inversion. But still, nothing's going to change here. We're going to take the verb gehen, unconjugate it, throw it to the end, and in its place, the conjugated form of the verb müssen. That's the modal auxiliary that we're going to be using with this sentence. And it turns into, müssen Sie nach Hause gehen? Do you have to go home now? Wetzen wir die Bleistifte? Are we sharpening the pencils? Wetzen wir die Bleistifte? Dürfen wir die Bleistifte wetzen? May we sharpen the pencils? Ihr kommt 9:20 Uhr. You guys are coming at 9:20. Ihr werdet 9:20 Uhr kommen. You guys will come at 9:20. This is a great example of a whole bunch of words that are coming between the modal auxiliary verb and the infinitive at the end. This last example, pay very close attention to this one because this causes lots of issues with students. We have ist spät. He is late. Nothing irregular is going to be happening here in terms of the word placement. Look, we're going to take the verb ist and we're going to unconjugate it and throw it at the end. The problem is, wait a minute, what is ist unconjugated? Well, we have to remember that the verb ist comes from sein. Würde spät sein. He would be late. Würde spät sein. It's important, as you can see, to correctly be able to unconjugate a verb. Sometimes it's easy. Let's take a look at the verb trinken. We want to find out what is the unconjugated form of this verb. And I secretly, well, actually by accident, told you what the answer to that one was. Pardon me. All right, so here we have ich trinke, du trinkst, er trinkt, wir trinken, ihr trinkt, sie trinken. This one's kind of easy. Oh, what verb is this? Well, you just have to go backwards. If the ich form was formed by dropping the en and then adding an e, then let's go backwards. Drop the e and add an en. So this is the verb trinken. That's a regular verb, but here we have the verb backen. It's a pot verb. You can see that the du and the as the s form have umlauts. The other forms don't. So don't write the infinitive, the unconjugated form, as becken with an umlaut. Oh, no, no. Make sure that you take that umlaut off. You're going to have to remember that backen is an irregular verb. This comes from backen. If you see any of these, ich bin, ihr seid, sie sind, this is the most irregular verb in German. Don't forget that this verb is sein. You're going to see that in just a little bit. Now on the bottom here, what are the infinitives of the following verbs? I also shared with you, I gave you a heads up that 3 of them are irregular. At this point, you can pause the video and see if you can come up with the infinitives yourselves. And then you can come back and check your answers. Not affinitive, it's an infinitive. So you can pause now. So we have the verb stiehlt. That was back in the Christmas packet. That comes from the verb stehlen. Regnet and schneit, those are weather terms. That comes from the verb regnen and schneien. Singen, well, that's an easy one. Comes from singen. These two are irregular. I don't know if you remember, but we did talk about this. If ever I say that a verb is irregular, except for sein and those 9 modals, if ever I say that a verb is irregular, then it's a pot verb. And if that verb happens to have an A in it, the only thing that makes it irregular is that the A gets an umlaut. So here we see verbs that are irregular and have an umlaut, so that means that their unconjugated form will have no umlaut. Schlafen, laufen. What we're going to do next is we're going to practice injecting some modal auxiliary verbs into a sentence. Here we have Ich spiele Tennis. I play tennis. We want to make this I would play tennis. What we do is we take this verb spielen, spiele, we're going to unconjugate it and throw it to the end, and then in its place, we're going to put the ich form of würden. So it'll look like this. Ich würde Tennis spielen. Ich würde Tennis spielen. Now at this point you can pause and you can try doing some of these on your own and then unpause it and see how you did. We're going to take the verb könnten, which means could, and we're going to inject this. Bringst du die Milch? Are you bringing the milk? And then you can change it to could you bring the milk? We take this verb, unconjugate it, and throw it to the end. And in its place, we're going to put the do form of the modal. Now, if you don't remember how to conjugate that verb, that's okay. Use the notes that I gave you. Refer to those notes. Könntest du die Milch bringen? Could you bring the milk? Könntest du die Milch bringen? With this one, you take the verb kauft, unconjugate it, throw it at the end, and insert the form of werden that jives with meine Mutter. That's the same as saying she. My mother is buying juice at Walmart. We're going to make it my mother will buy juice at Walmart. Meine Mutter wird Saft bei Walmart kaufen. Meine Mutter wird Saft bei Walmart kaufen. Wir trinken Wasser. Well, that one's going to change into wir sollen Wasser trinken. We should drink water. Wir sollen Wasser trinken. Notice with all of these sentences that we've had so far, we have the modal, and then the other verb is unconjugated at the end. Modal, unconjugated verb, the infinitive, at the end. Modal, infinitive at the end. Modal, infinitive at the end. This next sentence has, actually the next two sentences, numbers 5 and 6, have irregular verbs. So watch out. We're going to take this verb seid and unconjugate it and throw it to the end. And in its place, put in the correct form, the ihr form of wollen. Remember, wollen means to want. Here we go. Wollt ihr krank? Now, the unconjugated form of seid is sein. Wollt ihr krank sein? Do you want to be sick? Let's try this one. Sie backt Kekse. We're going to take this verb backt, unconjugate it, and throw it to the end. And in its form, in its place, put in the Z form of the verb. Now, if you're looking at this Z form and you don't know which form is this she? Is it they? Is it formal you? Well, the fact that it ends in a T helps us to narrow it down to it being she, third person singular. Sie mag Kekse backen. Notice that backen has no umlaut. It only had an umlaut over here because this is an irregular pop verb. Sie mag Kekse backen. She likes baking cookies, or she likes to bake cookies. Meine Freunde gehen nach Hause. My friends are going home. Let's throw in the verb möchten, which means would like. My friends would like to go home. Meine Freunde möchten nach Hause gehen. Meine Freunde möchten nach Hause gehen. My friends would like to go home. This means friends. Remember, oops, there's an N in there. Remember, Freund means friend. Freunde is plural, meaning friends. Another hint that this is plural is that this verb up here ends in an en. That's the third person plural. That's the sie plural, sie, they form of the verb. And then our last one, du bist spät. You are late. Remember, you can pause this, try it on your own, and compare. Du kannst spät sein. Du kannst spät sein. You can be late. So, ladies and gentlemen, remember, there are 10 modal auxiliary verbs. They are all irregular. The first 9 on our list are crock-pot verbs. The last one is a pot verb. Also remember that the ich and the as the S form will be the same, and just add an ST to get to the do form. Secondly, whenever you use a modal verb, the other verb goes at the end of the sentence unconjugated. If you have any questions whatsoever, just drop me an email. And as usual, I always suggest that you check your email, Google Classroom, and the portal at least once daily. All right, guys, again, just write me an email. If you have any questions or concerns, I am here to help. All right, talk to you later. Auf Wiedersehen.